so the universe is impartial. It's impersonal, and it'll give us whatever we basically ask for, and through our thoughts, feelings, images, emotions. I mean, that's how we are asking.
Now, you mentioned that with our emotions, we're thinking of fear, probably a negativity, a lot more than usual. Do you think that that's something that's conditioned into us as we grow and as we're part of this society?
Well, I think it's a base human emotion that other humans use to control other humans. I mean, even parents, I mean, in well-meaning and even, accurately, don't cross the street. You'll get hit by a car. You'll get killed. So we're conditioned right from the start that don't touch that flame. It's hot. It will burn you. So, I mean, it's a positive thing. Fear can be, but the way it's used, um, to market things or to, push certain agendas or whatever is not a positive thing because it's a lot of what, the human beings are driven through their life and propelled through their life on a daily basis because of fear. In other words, they're trying to avoid things more than they're trying to reach out. They're trying to protect themselves more than they're trying to expand and accomplish something. And so it's a double-edged sword. It has its need in the evolutionary process of, keeping human beings alive, but it is also very counterproductive when it gets out of hand and when it's too predominant in a person's consciousness.
Have you ever noticed any difference between positive thinking versus negative? Is there, are they equally the same based on each person? So if you're thinking positively towards something versus negatively, is it the same reaction you're going to get as if you were to think of it negatively, or is one greater than the other?
Well, here's the one thing that would tend to make one more powerful than the other is that there's a force in the universe. Some people call it God or whatever, and it does it's always tending toward growth and harmony and healing and things of that nature. But on the human level, I mean, positive and negative can have the same types of, very powerful effects. So if we're thinking positively and attracting, positive things, we can think about positive things but have negative emotions. Like we think about, oh, look at that beautiful house on the hill, but I'm sure I'll never be able to afford it. So
I see.
we can mix the positive images with the negative, you know, outcomes. And so it's really kind of a science to understand how the mind works and how positive and negative images and, thoughts and concepts and goals interact with the associated feelings behind them. And really what comes down to belief and expectancy and things of that nature. And when we understand it all, then we can start to put the little ducks in a row so that we can start to make things come more and more in our favor, meaning more and more of what we want and less of what we don't want.
If I were to think negatively out of fear, but my fear is that I'm really just trying to protect something, am I creating that? No matter what, and what I mean by this is I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job. I'm afraid I'm going to lose a family member. Let's just put some of those things out there right now. That's a negative fear, and it's not necessarily out of negativity. It's just more saying, I'm afraid that this is going to happen. Is that causing a ripple in my life to where ultimately that if I focus too much on it, it's going to actually happen?
It very well could, because what you're explaining right now, and if you think about it, every thought, every fear you've had hasn't come about, and every hope and dream you've had hasn't come about. So it's really the most powerful ones that really take hold of us and that we really take hold of. But in the process you just explained and went through, that is the creative process. We have thoughts, concepts, and images of a thing or a set of circumstances or whatever it is. And in this case, you're describing something that you obviously wouldn't want, like, a family member to die or something. And through the fear, we're adding power to that. There's a quote, I guess, out of the Bible, that thing which I feared the most has come upon me. And that's a very deep metaphysical teaching. And again, here we have the image or the mold, and now we have the power, which is our fear. So we're breathing life into that. And the more we think about it, the more we obsess about it, the more we look at different angles of what it's going to play out like. You know, what about that person's children? Who's going to take care of them? And we get more afraid. And so you're really building. And if we turn it around and we say, oh, well, what if I can be this, or I can be a successful that, and what's that going to look like? And boy, I'm getting more excited. And so you see, it's the same exact process. The universe itself, the subconscious mind and the subconscious level of the universe does not care, really. It's all experience. There's no judgment, either good or bad. I mean, some of our greatest lessons we learn from some of our hardest, most negative, supposedly, experiences. So, but there is in the universe something that is positive and good, and that can, override even our own stupidity or naivety sometimes when and people, I've had experiences, and people call it divine intervention or whatever. But for the most part, the average person who's not, highly spiritually involved, it mostly learns through experience, and therefore they are allowed, if we want to put it that way, to experience the results of their actions in thought and deed. And so how do we teach a person, how do you teach a child not to touch the flame? Well, they touch it a couple of times, and then they start getting the idea, oh, I better not do that. I don't like the result. Well, when people understand that every time they think a negative thought, that's what's causing all these negative results to come in their life. Once they have this information, they start to think, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't think those thoughts too much. Maybe I should, change what I'm doing. And so it's all a wonderful learning process. The further we get up out into space and look back at the Earth as this tiny little, thing, supposedly, quantum physics tells us it's really not, none of this is what we think it is. But the more perspective we get on it, we really come to the point where we're not even judging things as good as bad. In other words, prosperity is good and poverty is bad. There's no judgment like that. It's each person's experience. So I tell people, we don't have to judge good or bad, right or wrong, but what I do like to judge is desired or undesired, undesirable or desirable to me. And so that's what I create based on.
Is this something that we've known for a long time? I mean, you were mentioning the Bible, you were mentioning, is this going back to the Old Testament or even back before the Bible was written? Did we always know that we could affect our lives through the power of our mind?
Well, I'm not a scholar of like a Bible scholar or anything like that, but there are people out there who are, and practically everyone you hear in this field, and some have done a lot more research than others, will tell you that this basic mindset and this basic information has been around for eternity, for as long as man has been here, for as long as there's been a record of his thoughts in basically every tradition, every religion, every spiritual tradition. If you look at the great minds in other fields of science, whether it's Einstein or Emerson or they've all had these little bits of truth. And when you put it all together, it's basically the law of attraction. It's basically the law of mind power or manifesting. And so as far as I understand and as far as I can tell, it has been around forever. But the difference today is that more people, now we have more people on the planet than ever before, yes, but we also have a higher percentage of people who have at least been exposed to these concepts, and a higher percentage who are actually trying to learn them and practice them, whereas in the distant past, people talk about the Alexandrian library being burned because it had all of these books with all of this type of information. I wasn't there. I don't even know, I don't believe half of what, is supposed to have happened because, everything is subjective and things are written for certain reasons. But the point being that a select few have always known this. Have always known it, and at times apparently it has been a very jealously guarded secret.
Now, I want to back up really quick because I want to let everybody know who's listening. You can go up to faustfiles.com and you can click on the tab. It should be in the lower right-hand corner. You can send me a message if you want. I have Simon who's watching online through the website, And he mentioned, he said, can something fairly trivial, such as a favorite sports team losing, affect my attitude?
Oh, are you asking me?
Yes, that was a comment that we had come through the chat.
Oh, in other words, can something like his favorite sport team losing affect
Yes.
his attitude? Absolutely, absolutely. If we let it, it's the meaning we ascribe to it. And I'm not a sports fan, but a lot of people are, and they ascribe a lot of meaning to the events, and they become very elated and happy and jumping around when their team wins or the touchdown or whatever, and just the opposite when things don't go their way. Here's another thing, though, that most people would never think of, and I don't know if anyone else, if I've ever heard it, but I know if everything we think we know about mind power and the law of attraction and everything else is true and how consciousness flows, yes, the event can affect the emotions or whatever, thoughts, even feelings of the spectators. But how about the concept that the thoughts, feelings, spectators, desires, will of the audience, of the spectators, can affect the event? That's a whole other angle of it. And if we take the science of and the understanding of mind power and the law of attraction and everything at face value, and if we believe the outcomes and the conclusions based on current scientific findings in quantum physics and quantum mechanics, we would have to conclude that yes, not only does that event affect the spectator, but the spectator can affect the event. And in the deeper view, both metaphysically, the mystics and the quantum physicists, the event and the viewer, the observed and the observer, are actually not separate.
Now, James, I'm going to stop you right there because you got me thinking. What if you're at a football game and you're fairly matched by one side is rooting for one team and the other side's rooting for the other team? Now, is there a volume of mind power that is at work that's kind of forcing how that outcome's going to be, whether positively or negatively? Or, are some people just more conditioned to be more pushing out more mind power than others? Because what I'm trying to look at is I'm taking this analogy that we just had come through where we have the sports team, and I'm thinking, when you're in an arena full of so many people, how are you contributing, or are you fighting against other people's will to have something change?
Right. Well, it's a multifaceted, multifactorial thing we got going here, because we not only have the fans of each team to consider, but we have the teams themselves.
Okay.
And not only their minds, but their preparation, their abilities, their skills. And it's not only like just emotion. Sure, both sides of, both spectators of each team, fans of each team, have desire for their team to win. But each individual, like no two individuals have the same amount of desire. And beyond that, there's belief, okay? And belief is a step past that. Not only do we really want our team to win, but we really believe. Maybe we've bet money and everything else. It's like a sure thing. So now belief starts coming into it. But not only on the part of the spectators, but of the teams themselves. So, until everything has happened, anything can happen. But there are so many factors involved having to do with, the teams themselves, mentally and physically, as far as preparation and aptitude and all of that, but also with the spectators' desire, belief, expectancy. And so it's not just the teams, one team against the other. It's the team and their fans against the other team and their fans. That's the big picture of the conflict or contest going on.
Okay, so I'm gonna take a step forward now with you, because we're going to talk about your book, but I do want to dabble into something really quick. Is that there's a lot of people out there who jumped on this bandwagon about 10 to 15 years ago, I want to say. And there was something that came out that was called The Secret. Now, The Secret was a very hyped up publication, but it brought awareness of the possibility to this law of attraction to mainstream.
Right.
Was this something that is it generated out of a marketing intent, or is it generated out of the fact that people need to be more aware of what they're truly capable of? Because I remember this just blowing up. I mean, this was a huge, big ordeal. What, 2003, I want to say, so 15 years ago. And you really don't hear about it anymore. I just think that you hear more just about the law of attraction, almost like it started a movement, but then it just didn't finish it. Does that make sense?
Oh, certainly. I just looked up a little bit about The Secret on Google before the show because I thought of The Secret also, because that's really where the law of attraction like just exploded, like you said.
Mhm.
Oprah had, some of the authors on more than once, and it really came into the consciousness of the people. And I think it was 2006 when the book came out. And of course, the film was sometime before that. And but the secret hasn't disappeared. I mean, just
Hmm.
go on Amazon and look at the stats for the books, and it's spun off other books, the Power and the this or whatever. So there's other books that have come from it. And I just read that apparently The Secret has sold 30 million copies worldwide and is in
Really?
50 different languages. So it never went away. It didn't like spark something and then something else take over. The secret is a force. It's out there. It's in the collective consciousness. People still say, they'll say, "Well, do you know what the secret is?" Instead of,
Mhm.
"Do you know about the law of attraction?"
Hmm.
But I think that the book and the film are wonderful. They came. The understanding is presented in a very simple and engaging way, and there's nothing in there really to argue with as far as the concepts and the principles and the techniques. The three basics are there: ask, believe, and receive. And I think the book though that sparked that was that Rhonda Byrne read The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles, which is a book I love, one of my favorites. Very small, very simple book like mine, and uh, so she was inspired by that, and she wanted to bring this understanding to a wider audience, and indeed has. And like I say, today, with the help of The Secret and many other teachers from The Secret and whatnot, and just many people out there. But these same things have been taught. Like I quote 160 other books in my book, and a lot of these quotes are from long, long time ago. 1800s, even 1700s or earlier. So this information itself has been around for a
So
long time.
so if so many people know about it, are they getting what they want out of life? Because if 30 million copies of The Secret are sold, is this something that everybody's able to tune into now and they're getting what they want? And is that affecting other people?
Well, here's the thing. Information is one thing and action is another.
Mhm.
Really, really doing it, really doing the thing. And most people don't. It's just
That's
it's
true.
just flat out. I mean, because I've my book came out in 2007, so it's like 11 years now. I had it out of print for a while, but then I put it back in a different way. And so I've been talking to people about this, for more than a decade now. And some people really take it to heart, and some people don't. So I don't identify myself as I'm a law of attraction teacher. I identify myself as a mind power teacher. I think mind
Okay.
power is at the base of it all, and of course it's the focus. One of the money and mind power. Those are the focus of my book. But I tell people, like in my book, for instance, to read this every day, even if it's one of the quotes, but just stick with it, because
Mhm.
people read something or see a film or go to a lecture, they get real excited, and then they go back to their own lives. Now, I'm not telling other people to do this, but I personally got rid of our television sets it's more than 5.5 years
That's a
ago
good
now.
idea. That is a
Right.
great idea.
Right. And completely. I mean, I saw a study that said the average American at that time anyway watched, 4 hours of television 7 days a week is what it came out to. And I figured that out to how many months
Mhm.
a year. I don't have the figures in my head, but how many months a year that was of 40-hour work weeks. And I thought,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, this is unbelievable and unacceptable for me. But here's the thing. So yeah, people read The Secret, or they see the movie, or they read other books, read my book or whatever. But guess what? That's only a couple hours of something they do, and maybe they'll try to do a few visualizations or whatever. But what about the rest of the 16 or so hours they're awake? What about what they hear at home, on the media, from their friends, from their coworkers? What about all the news? And everything seems to be disempowering, fear-based, showing us what's not possible, why we should just be happy to be surviving, why we shouldn't try to, aspire to too much. And so the way I teach it and the way I try to inspire people is that for me, this isn't like a hobby, mind power. It's not even a practice. It's in the blood. It's visceral. It's in every moment. Like, sure, I'll have a negative thought once in a while, but never without noticing it immediately, and then turning it around. And you don't do that by fighting that thought or trying to push it away. You do it by simply putting your mind on its opposite. If you're thinking about something you don't want to happen, I won't have my money for my rent, then a person can just say, well, they can see themselves paying their rent. They can use an affirmation. I'm so happy and grateful now that I always pay my rent on time. So the process works and it beautifully. But here's the thing, just to reiterate the point, people don't do it enough to where they get to where they're thinking positively most of the time, negatively less than 50%. Because you have to remember, mostly everyone who comes into the Read the Secret or any other self-help book, the average person on the street is thinking in counterproductive ways, probably 75, 70, 80% of the time. That's not going to change from reading a book and hearing a few concepts. It takes really diligent work on an inner, soulic, mental, emotional level consistently every day, and you can turn yourself into a mind power powerhouse. I mean, I've worked mind power miracles, even hundreds of thousands of dollars. One time we were $50,000 in credit card debt before I published the book, and I actually quit my job at that time to finish the book, which I'd already been working on for 8 years, believe it or not on and off, moving all between different states.
Well, you would think that was a crazy move, James.
Most people would think that was a terrible move, but I didn't just decide, well, maybe I should quit my job. It was like a spiritual knowing. I got off of a certain phone conversation, and it just hit me that if I ever am going to do this thing, I have to do it now. And the thing is, I had absolutely no fear. I absolutely knew inside that it was the right thing to do in that moment. And so $50,000 in credit card debt. I'm the only breadwinner in the family. I quit my job, my low-paying job as a caregiver to a developmentally disabled man. I'm like 48 years old at this time, a total failure in life by most people's view. And I quit my job, which now I'm not only a failure, but I'm crazy. And within 3 months, I attracted 2 six-figure windfalls into the house. Within a year of quitting my job, I published my book. And, of course, I just recently published my 10th book, and I'm living my dream, but I had to claim it first. Now, I'm not telling people to quit their jobs. If it's right for them, they'll know it. But sometimes we just really have to step out. But in that moment is when I really began. I had used these techniques already for, and since I was a very young person, for decades. But not like it's life and death. Not like this is more important than anything. It's my mind. That's ground zero. And when you make that step, then everything is going to be different. My 2 greatest or most impressive, to me anyway, mind power money miracles have happened at the 2 lowest financial points in my life because I was pushed into a corner. So sometimes people are just too comfortable. They've had the same job for a while. They get back and forth to work. They got a nice car. They got beer in the fridge, and there's just no real momentum or purpose or reason that they have to completely change everything in a really serious way. So a lot of people have desire and they want to have better things, but it's not strong enough to make them actually do something. And I don't care how good the self-help book is, whether it's The Secret or any other book, the book ain't going to do it. It's still the person.
Now, I want to tell you, we watched The Secret, and it was back, my wife and I watched it in 2005, I want to say. And it was a bootleg DVD, because back then everybody was passing them around. They were making copies and just passing them around. And here, you got to watch this. You got to watch this. And we watched it, and I was thoroughly impressed by it because I tend to have an open mind about certain things like that. And I said, I really think that this is something that we can work with. And my wife is very conservative, very straight to the point, and it's like, no, this you're crazy thinking like this. You need to stick with whatever you're doing and stay focused, right? So for her, she's like, don't go off on these tangents. Don't go off and do what you are visioning and do what you need to do. She's very conservative in that way because she's fearful. But I convinced her to watch The Secret. And after we watched it together, she said, okay, I'm going to make a statement and I'm going to put it on a vision board. I'm going to do whatever. And I'm going to try to make this work. Well, instead what she did was she put it on tape. She videotaped herself. And what it was to get pregnant by August. That was her thing because she wanted a child so bad. She just had to have a child. And I'm not kidding. It was the craziest thing. She put that out there. She thought about it. She focused on it. And she was pregnant in August. It was August 18th. We got our ultrasound and everything. They came back and said, you're pregnant. Well, that was in 2005. And then also through 2006 that we were watching that video and then trying to make things happen. Now, for her, being conservative as she was, she still liked the fact of writing something down or thinking about it and trying to put it in her head, but she still has that negative part of of her brain that's saying, hey, this is a fear. You might not get this. It might not happen to you because it doesn't happen to you. It happens to other people. And I tried to condition her because as I started using it and I started using these techniques and I started thinking more towards the end goal in what I wanted to do, I was seeing a change, but it almost felt like I was being pulled back, like I wasn't able to get to my full potential on what I wanted to do. And that was because I felt that she was still fearful. Now, have you ever seen where couples together, if they're not focused on the same thing, they're not going to achieve it?
This comes up a lot, and no two people are in the same mindset. And both parties of a couple might be positive, both might be negatively minded, but they're not exact in their beliefs and expectancies and emotions involved with things. And so when one person in the house is like completely against this new age stuff, as some people call it, this new age hogwash or woo woo, and the other person's really into it, well, it's going to affect that person.
Mm-hmm.
So they're actually swimming upstream in a sense because there's someone that's right there that's close to them that's getting to affect them just like they're getting to affect the other person. Now, neither person in most cases is going to stay stationary. I'm from New Jersey. I live in San Diego now. But if I'm in New Jersey and it's the dead of winter and it's really cold out and I got the house nice and warm inside and then I open the front door, what happens? The cold air starts rushing in, the hot air starts rushing out, and all things being equal and nothing changing it and no one shutting the door, that's going to keep going on until the temperatures are equalized. That's what nature's trying to do. When two people come together in a conversation, could be on text, it could be in person, one has a positive outlook, one has a negative outlook. Here's what happens. It's like the door's been opened. And the negative starts rushing towards the positive, and the positive starts rushing towards the negative. So the negative person is going to drag down the positive person to some degree, even if imperceptibly. The positive person is going to pull up the negative person to some degree, even if imperceptibly, and that's going to happen. And so our goal, as usually being the more of the positive person in most of our relationships, because most people don't have the understanding we have, or the outlook or the optimism or whatever, is to try to bring people up as much as we possibly can and to try to be brought down as little as we can. But we have to understand, I mean, that's why it's a cliche almost that, all the the masters and stuff go out to the desert or into a cave, for 40 days or for a year or whatever, is because they understand. And at this point in my life, again, I'm not telling people to do this, but I recently went out. It was yesterday morning because I needed to take the car in for some servicing to the dealer. And I hadn't been out of the house for, I think it's 45, 46 days. I'm a relative recluse. This is one of the reasons, because because I know that people affect people. And and the great masters have known that if you're really going to bring yourself to a very high spiritual state of being a manifester and a mind power, whiz and all of this, you can't just let people have your consciousness like that. And I don't let it in through media or anything else. I use social media selectively. I seek out the information and the outlooks that I need. But it's not a negative thing. I mean, it can make us stronger. One part of the couple, one half is more positive, and one is more negative. It's all in divine order in some way. I do believe that, and so. But our job is to try to help the other person up as much as possible, while at the same time being affected as little as possible ourselves.
Interesting. So, would this also affect our country right now? Because if you think about it, our country is almost like it's almost like a husband and wife, because you have two sides. We don't really have multiple sides to our country. And I had a question come through the chat. It was from Bill. And by the way, if anybody wants to ask a question, they can go up to faustfiles.com and click on the lower right tab, and you can send a chat. That'll come through to me, and I can ask it here to James. And it says, your thoughts on the law of attraction, do they help explain how the U.S. is divided into two camps so strongly right now? So I think what he's trying to say is it's very, the two opposing parties, we know who they are, the Republicans and the Democrats, is very, very strong right now. Now, I would take that comment and say it's always been strong since we've had a two-party system, but it seems like right now there's a lot of negativity on both sides that are pulling everybody apart from each other.
Right. And so the question is, what?
The thoughts on the law of attraction to help explain how the U.S. is divided. So how does the law of attraction help explain the division of the U.S., is what he's trying to say.
Right. Okay, well, like from someone like me, like from my vantage point of not really being plugged in to like the mainstream view of everything, I basically get it because I'm on social media. So I, inadvertently, I see a little bit of what's going on. I'm not really all that, into it, and that's by design. Mm-hmm. But we have to remember that things aren't always quite what they seem either. So the law of attraction is always at work, but sometimes there's like a puppet master behind the scenes, mm-hmm. right? I mean, I agree. You can have two people in the ring, let's say the wrestling ring or the boxing ring, and they each have their very vocal and strong proponents, and they hate the other ones, and the two fighters put on a show that they hate each other, and they're people are holding them back from each other but what if those two guys are the best of friends? What if their PR team and the other PR team is one team? Mm-hmm. And so I like to tell people, if you want to take back some of your own power and apply the law of attraction in your own life, maybe think about the fact that you're just being, led around by the nose for certain purposes and distracted, and nobody who's at the top of disseminating all of these views and activities is even half as invested emotionally in it as they're causing you to be.
Exactly. And I want to let everybody know that what James is saying right now, I believe is incredibly accurate, because my own personal opinion is that when you watch the news, when you're focused on this system that we live in right now, you are being led. And my full theory on everything has always been, I don't go to Republican or Democrat because I'm an independent thinker. I don't have to side with anybody. I make my own decisions and I have my own personal feelings about specific things in my life. And I choose to stay positive thinking in everything that I'm doing. But I believe deep down that there's something greater within our system. And I don't know if it's a secret government or there's something, but there is a puppet master at work that is trying to get these emotions from a large audience. So the general populace will fall into this trap and will be negative and will feel horrible. I've seen people who are so focused on, even today, it's been 2 years after we elected the last president, and they're still just so worked up about it and so negative. And it's like, look, we have to move on with life, because if we don't move on with life, we're not going to get anything accomplished. We can't sit and dwell on something that has already happened. We need to focus on going forward. And it doesn't matter who's in that seat. It really doesn't, because I feel that it's done by design. There's a purpose for it, and the purpose is not a good one. And it's just my opinion. I'm just throwing that out there. But James, you're absolutely right. There is somebody, and it's just like a wrestling match, just like you said. But wrestling, as we know, is fake. And in a way, it's kind of like saying, in boxing, somebody throws the fight. It's almost like it's happening by design, almost like somebody's really trying to focus it and make it happen their way, that they want it to be.
Right, right. And there's another factor too involved when you consider the fact that everything is energy, and that emotion is in the human, form. That's where energy is really created. That's where it can be transferred. That's where it can be given to others. That's where it can be taken. Most people into metaphysics and spirituality are familiar with the term psychic vampire. And
Yes.
so what if there are psychic vampires, psychopaths, sociopaths, which are the kinds of people who would just naturally seek positions of power because that's what they do, whether it's in government in a small town somewhere in Oregon, or whether it's on a national and international level, whether it's within a hospital or some business. The psychopaths, right, they're going to seek the powers of position. And those people have no empathy, and among them are a lot of psychic vampires. So what if all of our collective 300, last time I heard, million people's energy, 7 billion on the planet, is being extracted from us by playing us like a violin? And then people, if I can just say quickly, and I'm not a big, I'm not going to be a martyr, and I'm not going out trying to, point the finger at people, this and that. But if you look at some of the conspiracy theorists and their theories and how they back them up about certain events that go on, big, huge, worldwide, earth-shattering events that when you look behind the scenes, it's like those are even orchestrated, no matter how many people died in the event and all of that. It just makes my case stronger, which is, I teach people how to attract money using mind power, but my real message is individual power. And that it really comes down to spiritual power. It's even beyond mind power. Mind power is a part of that. But when we start to really tap into our own spiritual power, we will be, it was the Buddha who is purported to have said, if you knew how perfect everything was, you would throw your head back and laugh at the sky. And that's the thing I find, the further I spiritually acclimated and powerful I become, the less involved I become with emotionally with what's going on out there. The quantum physicists, the cutting edge of science, will tell you that's not even actually real. There's nothing actually happening out there. There's only one being. There's only one ground of being. Everything is perceptual. It's happening actually within our brains, which are actually also projections of our minds. So it gets pretty deep, and so a lot of times, I won't go into it for, it's not, people don't have to know that level of it to just use metaphysical techniques to attract money. I mean, the techniques are the techniques, you use them. or to attract any good thing in life.
Sure.
But the more spiritually acclimated and tuned in we become, the less any of that starts to even matter. I mean, you got somebody like Jim Carrey going around, and I love a lot of the stuff he's saying because he's saying he doesn't exist. He's saying none of this matters. He's saying a lot of things that quantum physicists and the mystics will back him up.
Yes. Now, James, have you seen the reaction that people give to him when he says that? The people around him are just shocked. They think he's crazy.
Yeah, no, I have on and off, and I was just on YouTube today. I don't know how I happened to cross something with Jim Carrey, and I was watching several of the things where he's sitting there with a couple other people in an interview or whatever, or being interviewed by, in one case, a woman, and they are beside themselves. They can't process it. They don't understand it. They are trying to make sense of it. It obviously and definitely makes everybody who's not tuned into it and very, very uncomfortable. That's for sure.
Okay, so this brings up a couple more things that I was going to talk about with you. And that was people will comment about Jim Carrey and they'll say he's woke, which means that he's awake. And he's awakened to the fact of something that the mainstream is not. Essentially, he knows and sees and senses or feels or whatever his experience is, that's his. You could tell from his personality, his attitude, everything that's changed about him, that he has awakened to something new, which leads me to, are we part of a matrix environment? Now, what I mean by that is this, James. So many people say that when you're awakened to the matrix, and I'm not talking about the movie, but in a way I am, because I'm meaning our reality itself is something that's totally, it's almost like it's a dream. And that to me is how we manifest what we need to manifest in our life. Or it's, some people relate it to living in hell or living in purgatory or we live in something that's not real. And when we die, we go to what is truly real. And that the real is not the duality of where we are. The real doesn't care about duality. It doesn't care about, all of these things that people are pushing out there as far as that energy and creating that negative, positive spin. It just is. And I think that's where Jim Carrey was going with a lot of this stuff, was that he's just like, who am I? I'm not me. Because he was taking himself away from the character that he's portraying in this life, essentially.
Right. And, one word you used was the word dream, and that's exactly how I view this life. It is, and the mystics flat out use that word, in the past, life is a dream.
Yes, and I think the mystics of the future are going to start using that life is a simulation because a lot of people are moving towards a dream is like that old, the ancient way of saying that it's not real. And for this new generation that's coming in, the only thing that they can relate to is the technology. And it's like saying, look, you strap on a headset and you're into a VR world and it looks so real, James. It looks so real. And you can't really distinguish too much of a difference. And this is going to be 2019. What's it going to be like in 100 years? What's it going to be like in 1,000 years? We might be able to create realities that we can just lock ourselves into and live an entire life through. And then who's to say that we're not already in it? Who's to say that we're not part of Inception or, different philosophical ideas such as those?
Yeah, who's to say that we're not creations of a simulation of a simulation.
Yes.
I mean, I've heard very, very advanced minds on YouTube videos and things and some books talk about that. We really can't know what can we know? To think we can know anything from the human mind is, we can be a science experiment in a terrarium or fish tank in a grammar, the equivalent of a grammar school room somewhere.
Exactly.
We can't know anything. We can't know that we're. All we can know is that we exist in the fact that we have consciousness. We can't even be sure. And I don't think that I exist. I'm with Jim Carrey. I know that I don't exist. In my view, I say I know.
Mm-hmm.
The world doesn't exist. It's all just, you can call it a simulation or a dream. It's an experience of consciousness that unfolds through the process of consciousness. And I recently ran across, I should write it down and have it handy, but it was the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics basically said that there is no reality in the absence of the observation of it. And that's a big thought there. There's no reality in the absence of observation. And that's what I said earlier about the observed and the observer being basically one.
Right.
They are not separate. And
now, science has proven this. For those of you who think that science has not proven any of this, physicists proved it with the double split, the double slit, where they sent electrons in through two slits, and the only time that they changed the outcome of where they landed on the other side of that was when they were observed. So something happened when they were observed, and that shouldn't be possible, but that meant to physicists that when you observe something, it's causing a reality. It is causing something to happen through observation. Therefore, when there is no observation, nothing exists, essentially.
Right. That's the concept. And basically, they were trying to figure out if, I don't know if it was light they were using or whatever, but is this a particle or is this a wave? And actually, it exhibited qualities of both or either, but not at the same time. So we know through science now that there's nothing solid. Like, in the old days, we used to suppose that there were solid particles down there in the molecules or something. There's nothing solid. There is absolutely nothing solid. Everything is vibrating energy. And some quantum physicists will tell you that if you're driving down the street and the kids are in the back seat in your car, they're not actually there until you turn around and view them. What's behind you in the back seat, well, there is no back seat, but what's behind your perception or your awareness is basically waveforms.
Yes.
And they can be anything until they are collapsed into something. And the collapsing mechanism is the actual act of observation.
Yes. And just for everybody who's watching, I put up an image just to show you how this worked. I want everybody, if you're watching this and you want to find out more, just research it. But I put up a little graphic that I found to show that double slit and how that works. But that is a true thing that has been proven, and physicists still cannot figure it out. They don't understand why that is. But when we look at the fact that what we're living in is not reality, what we're living in is something very similar to a simulation, then more of it starts to make sense and become reality. So, James, really quick, we are running down. I mean, this has gone by very quickly. We have another, looks like 3 minutes left in the show. Is there anything, I'm going to put your website up here. Hold on one second. There we go. So for everybody who wants to get more information about James Goi Jr., where can they go, James?
It's my name, James, Goijr, and .com. So that's my website.
Okay.
And, of course, the book I'm best known for, How to Attract Money Using Mind Power. I have 10 books now. But I invite people to subscribe to my free monthly Mind, Power, and Money e-zine. And when they do, they get a free PDF copy of my entire book, Attract Money Forever. And so that's a great way to get started. Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. That's really good. And they can find all your books on Amazon too, correct?
Right. All of my books are available on Amazon in print and Kindle editions at this time.
Is there anything else that you wanted to let everybody know before we kind of close out the show?
Not really. I think we covered a lot of ground. I just want to encourage people to, if anything that, we said tonight, sparked something in you, grab hold of that tiny thread, before you wake up tomorrow and just let the whole world, drag you along and dictate your reality to you, and plug in somewhere. If it's my zine, if it's, whatever it is, plug in somewhere and hold on to this, because you can change your entire life if you take the moment to change what you're doing and how you're living, mentally, emotionally, and as an extension, what you do each day.
Very well said. Thank you so much, James, for being on the program. I really appreciate it.
Certainly. It's been a true pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Have a good evening.
Okay, you too. Thank you.
That was James Goi Jr. And I encourage all of you to please check out his stuff, because there is nothing more important than the power of your mind. There's nothing more important than realizing who you are, what this reality is all about, and making something better for yourself, making it better for others, better for your family, just making it better, because that is the true, that is a true purpose for us right here, is to learn and overcome all of this negativity that's being pushed out there. And I do agree with James. If you have a chance, turn off the news, turn off Facebook, turn off social media. Just turn it off. You don't have to necessarily turn off the YouTube, because YouTube is actually a great platform for finding these wonderful presentations like what you just saw tonight, what you just heard is great. And I really do hope that somebody has watched this and it has sparked something in them to say that they want to change, that they want to be, that they want to think better, they more positively, that they want to create the life for them. I think that's very, very important. And I truly, truly stand by that. Now, if you want to check out more, we have faustfiles.com. And if you go up to faustfiles.com, you'll be able to see all of our guests, including James, and all the links to his stuff. And you can also go check him out. And remember, he said that's jamesgoijr.com. And the Goi sounds just like it's spelled Goi. So James, GOIJR.com. Please go check him out, because that is incredibly positive. So the other thing, too, is if you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe. That is a big thing for us, because we are trying to get that YouTube channel pumped up and everything. We have more guests coming throughout the next weeks that are coming up. We have Tammy Urbanek, which is going to be on the show tomorrow at 8 o'clock. And that's a 1-hour show as well. And we're going to be talking to her about spiritual beings and the great unknown. But the one thing that Tammy will bring up tomorrow night is going to be the Montauk Project. And I know everybody's going to be tuning in for that, because that is a really cool story. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us tonight. My name is Chris Foust. You're listening to the Foust Files. Have a good night.